And my favorite science fiction movie is one that I have loved since I was a teenager. And it's Back to the Future. Specifically the first one.
Dude, Back to the Future goes so fucking hard.
I love Back to the Future so much. And we were talking about this in the car about what makes science fiction like a science fiction movie. And I think it's just fiction, but instead of magic or superheroes or whatever, it's like the things that are happening in the movie happen because of science. And this series has so much science mumbo jumbo and time machines and time travel and not parallel universes, but kind of like in the second one where Marty goes back.
Alternate universes.
Yeah. And so this is science fiction. And so I'm not going to fucking argue with anybody who doesn't think that this isn't science fiction. This is our podcast. So you can shove it right up your ass. Your opinion, that is. But, I mean, what can I say about that? It's like trying to talk about Rocky. It's like, it was a series that I watched a lot of in high school. Very formative years of my life. And I was discovering 80s movies and movies that weren't just shown to me by my parents or coming out at the time. And I have to thank James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd, for a lot of the media that I consumed in high school, because his taste informed mine in a lot of ways. Just watching his videos talking about his favorite movies and games and childhood memories. And I remember I would drink chocolate milk from Oberweis out of the big ass deliver to home glasses, and I would eat frozen waffles without cooking them. I was a weird kid. I would just munch on anyway. And so he would talk about Back to the Future, and that was a movie that I had seen references to in like Family Guy, and it's one of those landmark movies that people make reference to a lot, just in general. And when I finally watched it, I mean, it all makes sense. Like when you watch a movie that for years you've known about, and for years people have told you, like, that's a good movie. Like when I saw Shawshank Redemption for the first time, I was like, oh yeah, I get it. I get it now. But yeah, so with Back to the Future, you got Doc and Marty, probably one of the most like, it's a character dynamic, like archetype,
iconic duos.
Yeah, it's, you have the younger and then the scientist, specifically that duo of like young, scrappy, like, I don't know how the science works, but I'm gonna go along with you because I like adventure, and I'm a teenager and I like to skate around. And then you have, the older, wiser, like, I make all the inventions and blah blah blah. Yeah, and so getting to hear them do their banter with why am I forgetting both Michael J. Fox and Doc Brown is played by Christopher Lloyd. I almost said Lee. Christopher Lloyd. And watching Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox banter with one another, it's so natural, and you can tell that they were the best people for those characters. So many iconic lines come from this movie. Obviously, you have like, "Whoa, Doc, that's heavy," or
Great Scott.
But you also have bangers like "Make like a tree and get out of here." You have "You're about to see some serious shit," and like, I don't know, man. It's just, I feel like this is one of those movies that people could watch and quote the entire thing and it not be weird, because it's just that memorable, and it's that good. And it's also, I feel like the time travel concept wasn't really done in this kind of way up until this point. I feel like Back to the Future popularized the time travel trope in movies and TV, and going back and meeting your past self and affecting the future that way, and the butterfly effect of that. I feel like that's such an interesting concept that popular media up until 1985 hadn't really touched on. I'm sure The Twilight Zone had some episodes with time travel or things of that nature, science fiction-y things. But Back to the Future made time travel cool. They put that shit in a DeLorean. And the
way I see it, if you're going to build a time machine, you might as well do it with some style.
Yeah,
or something like that.
With the door coming up like that, and then the license, dude, so many shots too, like with the license plate spinning around with the two streams of fire after the DeLorean goes in time in the JC Penney parking lot. And it was also, I'm just rambling because I'm thinking about the mall parking lot. One very underrated detail, or I feel like detail that like movie nerds like to talk about, is when the mall is called the Twin Pine Mall at the beginning of the movie, and then at some point one of the trees in the past gets knocked over. I think when Marty shows up in the past in the DeLorean for the first time, and he knocks over the tree at the mall, and then when you go back to the future, it's the Lone Pine Mall, something like that. And so like the sign changed, and that shit is always really fun to see. Directed by Robert Zemeckis, who did a bunch of other fun. Obviously, he did the Back to the Future franchise. He also did Zathura, I think. What else did Robert Zemeckis do?
I don't think I've seen anything else he's done. But you know what? That's fine.
Movies by Robert Zemeckis. We're gonna figure this out. You talk about Back to the Future.
Yeah, I also.
Oh my god, fuck you.
I also agree. This is like, when I think of like movie trilogies, this is like the GOAT, because that and Evil Dead, I feel like if you watch one of them, you gotta watch them all.
Yeah,
they're very good marathoned. Like that's what we did with the OG three
Yeah.
Evil Deads. Like they're just like a lot of fun.
where the third one also feels very genre, like it takes such a left turn at the third movie.
Yeah, but I actually think I like the second one better. I like the future shit.
Yeah, but the second one doesn't work if you don't watch the first one.
Exactly.
You know, and so it's like I also feel like they make each other better. But yeah, also Forrest Gump. Robert Zemeckis did Forrest Gump.
Oh shit! Never mind. I guess I have seen more.
That's crazy. This is my only other story about Back to the Future. But in high school, I was in an AP Physics class, and AP Physics was mostly seniors and a couple of juniors. I was one of the couple of juniors. And so during AP testing, all of the seniors were off from school. So it was just me and like the 4 other juniors in the class that had to take the AP test. And our teacher, shout out Mr. Wick, he was like a younger guy. He liked to skateboard.
Baba Yaga.
Excuse me?
The Baba Yaga. Teacher was John Wick. It's crazy.
I guess.
Was his first name Lit?
He was pretty lit. He was a pretty lit. We gotta stop.
Litwick.
Yeah, I know, like the Pokemon, but also like a lit candle wick. It works. It has
Anyway,
layers.
tell us about Mr. Wick.
So Mr. Wick was a very cool teacher, and I remember we started taking the AP test, and at a certain point, almost as if we were reading from a script, all 5 of us picked our heads up and we slowly started to look around the room at each other with this confused look on our faces. And then we look up at Mr. Wick, who of course notices all of this happening. And he says, honestly, you guys can just turn in your papers now. And I forgot exactly what he said, but we all came to the conclusion that the short answer and the long answer, because it was mostly long answer and short answer questions about physics, which is crazy. We just didn't fill that shit out. Or like we tried as best we could and then we just handed in our stuff. And I think Mr. Wick acknowledged how difficult the AP physics test was. And especially like for us, my camera died.
Do it.
Okay.
Oh!
Nice catch. Holy shit. Laura, my family.
Anyway, you all looked around.
Yeah, and so Mr. Wick bought us pizza, and he had us watch we marathoned the Back to the Future trilogy over the course of AP testing week. Because we were supposed to be testing those days, but no one finished their test. And also, I think he had mentioned that like AP physics credits don't, like, we're not even going to benefit from having them. in some way. I don't know.
Well, then fix your shit, AP.
But it was awesome. It was fun. And so I remember watching those movies in class, and it's just like, this is the best. This is the best science fiction movie. That's not what I was thinking at the moment. I was just really happy to not be testing. So thank you, Robert Zemeckis and Mr. Wick, for joining forces and making my AP physics test that much more exciting. Yeah, dude, go watch Back to the Future if you haven't. It's like, man, it's a culturally significant film. If you haven't seen Rocky, watch fucking Rocky. Yeah, Back to the Future's it's really good. And
even though it's all in the past now. That was a crazy day. I remember because I was
in 2015.
Yeah, I was on my way to college with my classes, and like watching that. And then I remember like walking the street, and some lady was also watching that same fucking Jimmy Kimmel clip.
Oh yeah,
it was so cool.
Yeah, because they go 30 years back in the past to 1955, and then in the second movie they go 30 years back to the future in 2015, where they have self-lacing shoes and Jaws 4D.
Yep, and the Cubs win the World Series.
Which they were a year off.
Happened, yeah. That was crazy. That was even more crazy.
Yeah. So anyway, Back to the Future, favorite science fiction movie.